afternoon.
Wow, we've got a big turnout today. Big turnout. This is good news. I'm just going to take this opportunity to introduce my colleague, Bo. I'm going to put the spotlight on you, Bo.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. Yourself.
I'm Bo. Hello.
Welcome. Is that all you're going to do?
Yeah, short and sweet.
Short and sweet. Okay. This is Bo. He's going to be hanging around the session, so he'll also be watching the chat box and helping out with anyone that needs a little bit of help. So he is on Embed Services Host 1. So if you want to drop him a private message, if you're having any problems, and maybe I seem a bit busy, Bo's your guy. He's the one that can help you out. So please do feel free to drop him a line. A couple more minutes. I should probably introduce myself as well. My name's Hayley, and until recently, well, actually, until 1 year ago, exactly 1 year ago, I joined Embed Services as a program design and developer. So my job is to design quality continuing professional development programs for senior leaders, middle leaders, teachers, and it's my great love to facilitate CPD and to talk to adults about learning and trying to make it so that learning is relevant for adults. And this webinar series came from a little bit of a panic 4 weeks ago when we realized that stepping into the training room was not going to be an option for some time. So we all put our heads together and tried to work out what on earth we could do about this, because we're passionate about education. We want to make sure that every child gets a great future and all of that sort of stuff. And so I was like, what do we do? So we decided that we would take ourselves online. We've now done 12 webinars, and we're learning by the second. These at the moment are all free, just to try and help in a crisis. And with that, you have to bear in mind that we are learning. There are always technical glitches here and there, and we're learning. We're offering it as a free service to see if we can connect some educators and to make things happen. But I'm so glad that you joined me today, and I'm really, really excited to share with you kind of what we've been thinking about over the last few weeks. So just to give you a little bit of background to the session today, we're using Zoom. Now, the reason we're using Zoom is because there are some features on Zoom that add for a really, really, really collaborative experience. And I think one of the things that we believe very passionately is that collaboration is the key to learning, and that's for students and for teachers. So one of our challenges is to get that collaborative spirit, but not face to face. So there are some features that I'm going to draw your attention to. The first one is the reactions button at the bottom of Zoom. There's a reactions button. You can give a clap and you can give a thumbs up. And those reactions help out when people are speaking, because they get to see a little bit of what's going on. I just can see a thumbs up from Diane. Thank you very much. And those reactions are really helpful. The other feature is chat. It's very, very difficult to keep an eye on everything just as one person. So that's why I've got Bo looking at the chat, so he might be able to interact with a bit there. And then the other option is if you click on participants, you will see a grid and you can raise your hand. So if you go, there's some different reactions on there. You can put a thumbs up. You can say that you need a break and that you've gone. There are all sorts of things you can do with them. And you can also put your hand up. Now I'm trying to find that. I can't put my hand up because I'm the host. But if you put your hand up, beautiful. I can see Bo putting his hand up. I can see Nala putting her hand up. If you want to ask a question, I cannot 100% promise to see you. Now, I also have to be honest with you. I can't see all of your faces at the same time. So if you're trying to attract my attention with your hands, I can't always see that. So just try and use the chat box, try and use the hand up. If you put your hand up, please remember to put it down. Okay? And I will try and keep an eye on that as much as possible. Now, at the moment, you guys are all on mute. Now, the reason for that is because the background noise gets in the way. But later, we're going to be doing something called breakout rooms. Now, breakout rooms is where you have an opportunity to talk in small groups about what I've been talking about. And in those breakouts, you can unmute yourselves and have a discussion with the people in your room. Okay, we're on 12:37. And without further ado, I think I'd better crack on. Now, I'm going to warn you, I went through this deck this morning. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot that I'm going to be talking about today. So I just want to give you a heads up. It's the start of a conversation, not the end. I really deliberated over what to take out and what to keep in. And I didn't really reach any sort of general consensus on that. So you've got some of my thoughts, and I hope that what we're going to be doing today will be useful to you. So the first thing I want to do is just introduce the topic a little bit, and I'm going to do a quick poll. So today's topic, creating positive online learning environments. Now, as teachers, we spend a lot of time making sure that our classrooms are safe spaces. We spend a lot of time putting in thought about table arrangements, about display, about the emotional environment. Now, our kids are out of our reach. My question really is, how can we use everything that we know as professionals to try and inform that decision? I forgot to say this. This webinar will be recorded and it will be on YouTube. So if you don't want your face to be seen on the recording, please turn off your webcam. Thank you. So before we go any further, what I was saying about creating online safe spaces, I just want to do a little bit of a poll and see how people are feeling. So I'm going to launch the polling. What I'd like to know is, how are you feeling about our new normal? How are you feeling about distance learning? We've got number 1, in love. Number 2, super cool. Number 3, a bit fed up. Number 4, in shock. Number 5, unhappy. How are you feeling about this online new normal? Oh, we got a few unhappy. Oh, 1 unhappy. Couple in shock. Understandable. No one's fed up though. That's interesting. So we've all got a bit of energy, and I guess the fact that you've turned up to this webinar shows that you're interested in the conversation. Interested, great. Not many people in love just yet, but we've got a lot of people who are feeling super cool about it. Cool. I've got 32 out of 40. I'm going to finish it there. I'm going to share the results with you. Most people are feeling super cool. That's very good to know. Okay, you've heard me talk a lot. I've been talking now for about 10 minutes. And so I want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit. Now, one of the things that I've been thinking about, like I said, is that how do we transfer what we know about good teaching and learning? How do we transfer it online? Now, I know that there are a lot of schools struggling with connectivity and devices for children. But this is an example. What we're doing today is an example of synchronous learning. So some schools are doing live lessons, and this is an activity you can use with live lessons. It's not appropriate for kids who are not connected. This activity is called share and turns. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to ask you a question. The question is, what is a normal positive learning environment? I put some pictures on the slide to give you some ideas. If I was going to ask you this question 6 weeks ago, what makes a classroom positive? What would your answer have been? And the way we're going to do this, read the question, and you're going to work in breakout rooms to answer that question. You're going to take turns to provide the answer, and you're going to try and make a different contribution from the previous response. After completing as many turns as possible, you're going to come back into the main session. What I'd like you to do is have one person in your room to type out, maybe on a separate Word document while you're doing this, just type out the answers to your questions, and so you can drop them in the chat box for us all to see when we come back into the main room. So this is an example of a collaborative learning activity. There are some clear instructions, and there's a way for you to feed back to the group. Okay, can I just use your reactions? You've got reactions. Thumbs up if you understand what I'm asking you to do. Thumbs up. I can see a few faces. Let's see what we got. See if anyone's paying attention. Brilliant. I can see quite a few thumbs. Superb. Okay, so I'm going to put you into groups of around 6. Oh, I've got a raised hand. Let me see about raised hand. Chwaga. Hello, are you there? Have you got a raised hand? Hi, can I help? Can I answer a question? No.
Yeah, it's a yes from me.
Sorry?
There's no question, it's a yes from me.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very, very much. Wonderful. Okay, so the question you've got is, what is a normal positive learning environment? And I'm going to put you into some breakout rooms to do that. I'm going to put you in groups of about 6 to 7, just so that you can get started. And you're going to have 5 minutes. You will get a warning when you've got 1 minute left. Okay, so what you have to do is introduce yourself in your school. What does positive learning environment mean to you? And after about 3 minutes, you're going to have a screen like this. The host is inviting you to join breakout room, and you need to press join. Okay, so without much further ado, I'm going to send you off on your way. I hope you have a good discussion. Welcome back. I hope you had good conversations. I know, I'm very aware that there's not enough time. And I also know when people take a long time to come back in, it usually means they're having a nice conversation. So I'm really sorry. But if I don't keep these short and sweet, we'll never get through. It's only 1 hour. It's only 1 hour. All right. So if the person who is taking notes on your conversation could drop the answers to your questions into the chat box. So what is the normal online learning environment? What is the normal positive learning? Is the question. So if you can pop your answers. We've got a few. I've got Sherry on the go. Right, she says two-way interaction, collaboration, sufficient scaffolding, safe environment, questioning. Children are engaged all the time from Victoria. Any more for any more? See if we've got some. I know that it's hard to keep doing all of these different things at different times. Giving support to students, I think that's really important. Interaction, noisy, love it, getting them on board. That's something that we're struggling with now, I think, that noise. Although I saw an interesting thing, was like behavior management in the new normal. It's like used to be quiet, be quiet. Now it's mute all, and then we're done. Behavior management in the new normal. Okay, trust, rapport, active, love it, that's from Amina. Willingness to come to the learning environment, yes. Interactive, hands-on, noisy, absolutely. Okay, I totally agree with everything that you've shared. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about this question for CPD in the past. And this is some research that we've come up with. Put it down here, in the right one. This is some research that we've kind of consolidated over the last 10 years of working with Malaysian government schools, and we feel that these big categories are really good ways to think about positive learning environments. So what we're looking at is when we're doing teacher training, we're talking about how the classroom's laid out. We're talking about learning supports. We're talking about student ownership. We're talking about consistency, fairness, rules and routines. And I think all of the ideas you've contributed fit into those categories. And basically, if you get these things right, how you want them, that leads to good student behavior and therefore leads to a good learning environment. Now, the challenge that we've got, of course, is how do we do that online? We know what a good classroom display looks like. We know what good group work looks like. How do we take what we know and put it into online? And this is a question that I've been pulling my hair out about over the last 4 weeks. And so obviously I go to research. That's what we do, right? We go to research. So I started with thinking about the two different types of online learning. We've got asynchronous learning. That's where you put up work and the kids do it on their own. And we've got synchronous learning, which is this. This is what we're doing today. We're doing synchronous learning. So if you want to Google some ideas for these two, these are the two key words that you need. It's asynchronous learning. That's where you send a kid a project and they do it. And you've got synchronous learning where you do it all together. So I started, that was my starting point. And then I looked at research, and I found this quote from Stephen Fraser, who was the Deputy Chief Executive of the Education Endowment Foundation. And he, very helpfully, said, based on UK evidence, there's not a lot to go on. Brilliant. Brilliant. If the Chief Executive of the Education Endowment Foundation is saying that he doesn't really know the answer, as teachers, we've got to make some quick decisions. Luckily, the Education Endowment Foundation has done some further research. They published 2 reports, and they're called Rapid Evidence Assessment. And these articles are really good. I think they're really, really easy to follow. And for any school leaders who are looking for information about what sort of makes effective learning, these 2 reports are really good. I'm going to send the links to these later. These are the key takeaways I took from these research papers, though. Teacher quality is more important than how lessons are delivered. So if you're a teacher worrying that you're not doing Zoom lessons, do not worry. It's not about getting everyone technologically connected. It's not about that. It's about the quality of teaching. So this was the first thing. Pupils can learn through remote teaching, and it does not have to all be online. The second thing that I thought was fascinating was that peer interactions are the most important thing. Now, this is really interesting, and this is why these webinars are interactive, because collaboration and discussion is key. Finally, supporting pupils to work independently can improve learning outcomes. So when we set projects, we need to make sure we're supporting their soft skill development. Are we giving them checklists? Are we giving them good dates for deadlines? Are we helping them develop these skills because they're learning them at a rate of knots? And so as teachers, one of the things we can do support is put in some strategies for them to work independently. So this is something that I was thinking about. This is also the key thing that I found. The report adds, what matters most is whether the explanation builds clearly on pupils' prior learning and or how pupils' understanding is assessed. So basically, as teachers, it's not just about what we're giving them. We need to think about, is it building on what they already know? And are we thinking about an assessment for it? So these are 2 really, really key questions. And this is why my starter activity for you was for you to go into a breakout room and talk about classrooms. You know classrooms. So I've put that in as a starter activity today so that you can start building on what you already know. And this is, it seems from the research, and it's rapid research, we just don't know. It seems from the research that these are really, really key factors. University of Technology Sydney has also added, in this case, often a matter of finding a pragmatic solution to a problem that can be implemented immediately, rather than an elegant, scalable, and pedagogically sophisticated solution. What we're saying is that you're all trying your best. We need pragmatic solutions to problems. I'll give you an example. I wanted to export a video file from PowerPoint the other day, and every time my screensaver went on, the program crashed. So I had to very quickly find a way that my screensaver didn't go on. So I started playing a YouTube video. Now, I shared this with a colleague the other day, and he was like, don't be ridiculous, you can disable screensavers. I didn't know that. I didn't have time to find out. I found a pragmatic solution to the problem and it got me to where I was. And I feel like at the moment, teachers are finding those pragmatic solutions. So where do we go from here? This is the million-dollar question. Where on earth do we go from here? And I think that one of the things in this webinar, I've got that real balance between giving you information overload and giving you practical help. Already talked quite a lot. I've already told you a lot of information, hopefully reassuring information that says that everybody's trying their best and that's okay. Also reassuring, I feel, is that what we know about good teaching and learning still stands. And that is important to remember. We are professionals. We know how to teach. We can be creative with our solutions. So, finding the right tool for the right job is not always going to be possible. We are not going to be able to test it comprehensively. We're just going to have to try our best. So, with the rest of this, I want to look at some strategies for doing this. And I've shared a few of the things that I feel makes a positive learning environment. I want to start with the one which probably sounds the weirdest. But I feel that this is proof that it's time to think creatively. And this is what I'm saying. As teachers, we need to think creatively. So I started by thinking about classroom displays. Now, classroom displays, I know, is a good tool for learning. I know that if I put keywords up in my classroom, if I make it a nice place to be, if I make sure that my classroom is a nice, positive learning environment, then children learn better. So, some things that we should be doing as teachers. Do we know what access our kids have to a quiet learning space? Now, I'm not saying we can do anything about it, but having that knowledge will help us. Do we know what times they're working? Do we know what times their parents are working when there's support? All of this information will help us. Now, classroom displays. This one, Sherry, is in the webinar today. Sherry came up with this bright idea. This is about creating word walls in the house. Now, for young learners, they sometimes have a bedroom, there might be a fridge. Is there somewhere where they can display their work? Now, this seems like a really small and silly and inconsequential idea, but this is my suggestion. If kids are producing work they're proud of, and if children have a chance to display it, will it mean that they take more pride in their work? If you do an activity with children for keywords, can you get the support of parents and display those keywords in the home where they can see them? Because this might help reinforce their understanding of that vocabulary. Now, it's not a perfect fix. It's a very silly little fix, but maybe it might help one or two children along the way. The other thing that I was thinking about is rules and routines. Every single September for the UK and January for Malaysia, every September or January, we set rules and routines for our classes. Often the teacher will spend an hour going through what the expectations of her classroom is or his classroom is. Have we set rules and routines for online learning? If you haven't, I would suggest that would be a good thing to do. Set times that you expect children to be available. Work with parents. Find out what their restrictions are. Set boundaries for yourself. I've heard of teachers answering emails all through the night. This is not emotionally sustainable. We need rules and routines and expectations. And they need to be negotiated and they need to be shared. So that as a teacher is something we can do. So parents are reported being overwhelmed. Consider the messaging. How are you getting them the message? What time are you sending the emails? Is it adding to their stress? If they receive a WhatsApp at 6 p.m, are they going to read it or are they preparing dinner? Could you set up a broadcast channel so there's no one-way street? I was speaking to an SISC from Sabah yesterday, and she was saying she's got a 15-year-old son. His teacher's sending him work via WhatsApp, which is fine, but the WhatsApp chat is so enormous, and so many kids are commenting in the WhatsApp chat that the message with the work is moving right up. And she was saying, my son's 15, he doesn't want to scroll. I was like, what do you mean he doesn't want to scroll? She's like, he's literally too lazy to scroll. Have you got an application where kids don't have to scroll? Is there a way so that our key messages are not being lost? Or is there a possibility you can create a single point of contact? So for example, a Google site. Now this is the Bright Ideas Google site. Now Bo made this, he's in the webinar. Bo, I don't know, took what, 20 minutes to make it, to put it together, something about that. And it's great. It looks really professional. It looks lovely. The colors are easy. If all of the ideas are in one place, it's far, far easier for children to find it. There's also the possibility of e-portfolios. I was very lucky last year that I did an online instructional design course. Now, that's something my company paid for me to do. I was very privileged. I hated it. I hated it. It was so boring. But it gave me a chance, and they asked us to make an e-portfolio. Now this is my e-portfolio. As you can see, every week I added the task. Week 1 was all about me. Week 2 was something or other, and I made a little Google site. Now this online learning course to me was diabolical. I'd just broken my ankle. I was just not in a place to want to do learning. But I found my portfolio the other day, and do you know what? There's some really good stuff in there. And now I'm really pleased that I brought everything together in one place, and I've got a record of what I learned. And now that's something I can feel proud of. And we know that children like to see the fruit of their endeavours. So maybe we can start thinking about e-portfolios or photo albums of their learning. Okay, I've talked a lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you into some breakout rooms again, and you're going to be with a slightly different group of people this time. I want to mix you around a little bit. And what I'd like you to ask yourself is, how can we be creative? In what ways, from things that I've spoken about so far, what ways do you feel that there's potential to be creative with your new normal? So I'm going to recreate the rooms. Recreate all the rooms. You're going to be with slightly different people. And this time you're going to be talking about how can you be creative with your classroom displays, with your rules and routines, anything that you normally do. What are your hacks for getting around these things? I'd like you to share them with the people. Now it's the same principle. We're going to do share in turns. So everyone gets a chance to speak and contribute, and you are going to have about 5 minutes to do this, which I know is not long enough, but we're running out of time. So off you go into your rooms. This is your question. Okay. Back, everyone. If you've just got back in, if you could drop some of your ideas into the chat from your discussion. So the question is, what ways do you feel there's potential to be creative with your new normal? So if anyone's got any ideas, they can drop them into the chat. I know this is moving at a rate of knots, but I've only got an hour. So I'm just going to crack on. Okay, perfect. Lovely to see you all. I'm sorry, I know that there's not enough time. I'm getting complaints in my messages, but we've only got an hour. We've only got an hour. So if you could drop any ideas that you've had in the group chat, that would be great. And I really am to emphasize, this is the beginning of a conversation. It's not the end. This is just the questions that we can ask ourselves as we move through normal. These are questions that if you're a school leader, you can start asking teachers to think about. These are things that as a teacher you can start asking about your students. So we got Robert Fenn says collaborative software, absolutely. Teams, OneNote, screen record. For music, which allows students to collaborate on their work, absolutely. There are so many apps out there. I mean, it's overwhelming. And there is, I do think one word of warning is, if you choose an app and you try it one time and it doesn't work, don't give up on it and switch to another app. Sometimes it can take some time. And I know we've had this discussion internally about Zoom, because obviously Zoom's had its security issues. But we were using Zoom before the MCO, and all of our staff knew how to use it. So we were faced with that difficulty. Do we abandon ship and try something else? Will that have problems as well? So we had to make a decision to stick. And I think sometimes that's really, really important, that just because it doesn't work first time doesn't mean it won't work at all. And sometimes when we've got app after app after app after app, it can be very confusing. WhatsApp for students to return work, absolutely, that's a really, really nice platform. Teams is something I know a lot of, and absolutely, question there, what about students who have no internet or computers? That is the $1 million question. At the moment at LEAPED, we're developing a tips by text program. We're trying to think about how we can get low data text messages out there. These are all things that we've been thinking about and developing. And actually that software, that program was used before coronavirus, and it's had studies in UK and America, and now it's suddenly very, very needed. So we've started doing research on that. But these are all things that take some time. And at the moment, teachers are doing the best they can. I know of a government school, one of our trust schools, I think in Perlis, who is doing amazing things teaching maths lessons by WhatsApp. And we're going to be doing something about that on a webinar next week. There are also things that lots of teachers are using phones, but then if a child doesn't have a phone, who knows? We've got that program that YTL is offering with free data, maybe that's a start, but there are so many things that we need to put in place. And the other question, of course, is once we get out of this lockdown, we're going to have a bigger gap between those that have and those that have not. And that needs to be addressed as well, because lots of kids will not have had access for a long time. Okay, lots and lots and lots of questions. And I think that is really, really important at this stage, is this is the start of the conversation, not the end. Okay, we thought creatively about what we already know. Now, this is the big one that I want to talk about, student ownership. Now, student ownership is the amount of investment students have in their learning. So sometimes student ownership gets confused with student voice. It's not the same as student voice, but student voice is part of it. Student ownership might be the topics that they're learning, or the methods, the places where they're learning. It might be the shared goals. It might be self-driven outcomes. So when we're talking about student ownership, it's actually about choice. It's about students having some control over what they're doing. Now, a colleague of mine was sharing this morning, his daughter's 12, and she goes to an international school here. She started teaching herself British Sign Language. That is her choice. The school said that they had to learn a new skill. She has chosen British Sign Language, and she's cracking on beautifully with it. Now, that's an example of student choice. The school didn't say which skill you must learn. They gave them some options. She's chosen British Sign Language and she's loving it. So that is an example of student choice, and it's very simple. I'm going to focus here on relevance. So relevance is when students see a purpose in what they're doing. And I think that relevance is really key, because at the moment, there seems to be a lot of kids doing work that's not getting marked, or there's a lot of work being done by students that's just disappearing into thin air. There's no grades, there's no assessment. Now, I do not advocate for grades. I'm the last person to advocate for grades, but I am a massive advocate for feedback. If teachers don't give feedback on learning, what is the purpose? What is the relevance? And how do they get better? And now I know this from my own job. If I've got a project, if I've got a deadline and no one asks me about it, quite often that deadline will slip. Honestly, I am very deadline driven, and I'll only do work if I think it's absolutely necessary. Bo will agree with me here. The other thing is, of course, relevance to a situation. I've got 2 work tracks at the moment. Well, I've got hundreds of work tracks, but I've got 2 main work tracks. I've got these webinars and I've got a face-to-face workshop that is being delivered. It was supposed to be delivered this week, but actually it's now been moved to June. That workshop, it should be all planned and prepared and ready to go because I've had loads of time, but I see no relevance in it, so I haven't done it. It's got pushed. If there's no relevance into what I'm doing, I personally find it very hard to get on board and do it. So I've been concentrating on webinars. And I think what we need to remember is children and adults are very similar. If there's a point, if there's a purpose, they will do it better. And so that was kind of my second key question, is how can I make my topic relevant to my students and therefore get them more engaged and therefore more likely to do it and keep learning. So I've got a few ideas. This is a Bright idea. We're publishing Bright ideas every day. This is a thank you letter Bright idea. It's got a criteria for success on. It shows children what they have to do to make a good letter, because there's no point in them doing projects if they're rubbish. They need a criteria for success to know how to do it, criteria for success on it. There's a little bit of guidance on it for how parents can mark it, because sometimes parents can be very critical. I want parents to know that the positive is as important as the negative. So I've put in an assessment criteria. I've put in a criteria for success. I've put a checklist. This is a way that children can complete the English curriculum by doing a relevant task, writing a thank you letter. That's it. And at the moment, lots of thank you letters are doing the rounds. This is the mark scheme that I added. So as a teacher, what I would do is put this up onto Google Drive or to some shared document. And I would colour in where the kid had done it well and what the kid had to do differently. So for example, here you can see green, they've included their address, they've included the greeting, but they haven't done the date, and I've got their spelling, punctuation and grammar. It's a little bit off point. I put in 2 comments, well done, bit of praise, and then I've given them a next step task. What do they need to do to make that letter better? Now that is where learning happens, when they do a task and then they get feedback to make it better. And this colour coding of mark schemes is one quick way to do it. This is from my days as history teacher. So this is the GCSE syllabus. Okay, so in the GCSE syllabus, kids have to do source evaluation. And honestly, children hate it. It's so boring. Essentially, they have to look at some sources and they have to say who wrote it, why did they write it, what the tone, all of this sort of stuff is. And to be honest, then they have to answer an essay question like this. How useful are the sources for a historian? Dull in a classroom, let alone when they're at home and PlayStation is there. So one way to make this relevant is I've taken the mark scheme and I've put it into fake news detective. So they're going to do source evaluation, but they're going to do it using fake news. They're going to look at newspaper articles and evaluate whether they trust the newspaper or they don't, and why. And they can write a 15-mark essay using the same skills that they would in history GCSE, but they're using relevant and contemporary examples. Now, this is just a small example in my GCSE syllabus. Everyone is an expert in terms of their own syllabus. And there needs to be ways that we can be creative and find ways. So for this one, they used an exam skill to solve a modern day problem. And this is a final one. This one's a bit simpler, creating a fitness regime. They can research the activities, they can look at the timing, the duration. They've got speaking and listening skills in there, all these sort of things. And so the relevance is they've solved a problem, they can be used by people, they can share it. They can share it with their friends, they can share it with their family. Okay, so relevance in tasks I feel is really, really important. So these are another 3: movie reviews using higher order thinking skills, meal preps for science using carbohydrates, proteins, all of that sort of stuff. And then this one, which is another great one by Sherry, this was the public service announcement. So getting children to create a broadcast or a speaking and listening or some drama around the current modern situation. So what I'm calling these is authentic learning activities. They're relevant. For your subject, you can think of a skill you want them to develop or something you want to remember. So how can you make your subject relevant? So I'm going to put you into your final breakout room. You're literally going to have 5 minutes for this, and then we're going to wrap up. But this is your final thinking question for today. Is there any way that you could be creative and create relevant learning activities for the children in your subjects? I'm going to put you back into the same rooms you were in a minute ago so that you don't have to waste so much time introducing yourselves. And this will be our final breakout before we wrap up. Come back. If you could drop your ideas into the group chat, that would be great. Welcome back. If you can just drop your answers into the group chat, that would be great. So the question was, how do you create relevant learning activities in your subject? So hopefully I've given a couple of ideas. I think that this is where project-based learning really comes into its own, and that opportunity for children to do things that they might not always have the opportunity to have. Especially with children who it's very difficult to reach, maybe by giving a project that takes a week to complete might be something that is possible. So if you've got any ideas, do drop them in the group chat. I did say in my email that this would overrun, so if anyone does need to leave, I promise you I won't be offended. I've sent a feedback form. It's very important to me that you fill it in, please, so that I can keep learning. So if anyone does need to drop off, that's absolutely fine. I'm nearly finished, I promise, but I did say it would overrun, so give me a little bit of a break. Okay, so we've got Jamboard for students to share their ideas on topic learned. Phonics, yes, vocabulary, beautiful. As biology teacher, this is not difficult at the moment, as our current topic is disease and immunity. Oh my God, what a moment. What a moment to be teaching disease and immunity. That is brilliant. So there are so many opportunities to do something relevant there.
That's relevant. That's relevant.
Yes, that's relevant. Okay, so we've got writing that is relevant to issues affecting students like cyberbullying. Yeah, that's a really important one. We've got these kids online. Do they know how to use it safely? Are we making sure that they're staying safe? Less monitoring of screen time and all of that sort of stuff. So anything that we can, as schools, we can do to keep children safe online, I think is very relevant at this stage. There's a question there, what's Jamboard? I don't know the answer to that. Someone might have to answer that question. Grow a plant, start compost, worm, camp out, beach day reading, teaching PE swimming, asking students, taking 3 weeks to complete. And at the end, they'll do a project about water safety and life-saving. Perfect. Daily diary, comment about what they're doing in Telegram. All of these things are really relevant to the current situation. Script writing project, absolutely. This is the moment for the camera phone to shine. There's lots of opportunity. And again, children somehow, I've heard from teachers, and I don't want to be rude about our lovely students, but I did have a conversation with a teacher the other day who said, I thought none of my kids had access to mobile phones or hand phones. And I sent them worksheets and they told me they don't have a mobile phone, they don't have a hand phone. And I was like, all right, okay. And she's like, yeah, then I set them a project to make a song and suddenly they all had hand phones available to them. Yes. It's funny how these children don't have access to digital things when they don't want to. And to be honest, I hate worksheets too. So if I was a child, I am also, I'm going to tell you a secret. This is something I did once. I pretended once to have a broken arm so that I missed an essay for a deadline. That is how much I have bent the truth in my life. So I know that children aren't always telling the truth. No, that's a terrible thing to do and I should not condone it, and I don't. But I do think that sometimes children will do what they want to do. and they will make a choice. And sometimes technology will be available when they want it to be available. I don't know. It's just a suggestion. Okay, so that was a final thoughts. Thank you very much. Okay, so what we're talking about, these are the things that I've been talking about. I talked about a little bit about classroom displays, talked about routines. I didn't go over knowing your students, but I do think that that's important. Knowing the circumstance of your children is really, really important. And the final one was student ownership and making things relevant. So I banged through hundreds of ideas. I'm just going to launch one more poll. After my intensely fast webinar about things that we're doing, I want to know how you're feeling now. We're still feeling super cool. Good. I haven't scared you. Excited for more. Love it. Perfect. Excellent. That's really, really good. So yeah, we're coming to the end now, and I've lost about 10 of my participants. But never mind. It's all right. I know the thing at the moment is that time is such a commodity. We value our time so much more at the moment. I don't know about you guys. So I hope that this has been an hour well spent for you. My final message really is this one. I think this is really, really important. I think this is the moment that we need to respect our profession. And it may sound offbeat, but I really feel that it's an important message. One thing I noticed when I first came to Malaysia is lots of people use the word, I'm just a teacher. Oh, that drove me mad. How are you just a teacher? Teachers are superheroes and you're working really hard, but this is our moment to shine, because a lot of people out there think that teaching's easy. Now, I know that there's a lot of parents pulling their hair out, but parents still don't understand fully the techniques and the skills that goes into good teaching and learning. These are 2 tweets that summarize my learning a little bit. So this is the first one I saw on Facebook. It says, "Dear parents, don't stress about schoolwork in September. I'll get your children back on track." That's not the message either. As far as I'm concerned, we need to do everything we can now to make sure that gap doesn't widen. We're doing our best. We're not saying we can pick everyone up in September when they come back. That's not good enough. We have to trust our profession and make sure that we're giving good learning activities. And we have to switch the focus from what teachers are doing to what children are learning. Trust the profession in that respect. The final thing was the one from Stuart Locke, is that this could go on for a long time. People are talking about going in and out of lockdown for a year. We need to get our ducks in a row, and we need to make sure that the things that we're advocating for are good learning opportunities. So safe atmosphere, project-based learning, modeling, not just telling, all of these things we need to aim for. Now, with that said, I do think it's very, very important that you trust your struggle. You must trust your struggle here. We are working hard. It's not going to be perfect. There will be mistakes. So don't panic. Trust it. Trust it. And that really brings me to the end. I just want to give a little bit of a signpost to the next session. Bo, who's with me today, but him and Sherry have got a session on Tuesday about 2000 Wish Assessment for Learning, and I'm going to go again next Thursday to talk about research. And it's the same sort of topics I'm talking today, that we need to trust ourselves and that stuff we're giving is good quality teaching and learning. That's next Thursday. The sign up for both of these are not open yet, but they will be. They are coming, and I will post the feedback forms. Okay, I'm going to give one more cheeky poll before I go. It's a very simple question. Will you come again? Like I said, this is the start of a question. This is the start of a conversation, not the end. And I do feel that there is room for a lot more conversation around these. And what I love about this opportunity is that people have the opportunity to collaborate and problem solve. There is no one that knows best in this situation. We are absolutely learning together, and it's a privilege to be able to share some of my thoughts with you. So thank you very much for coming. Oh my goodness, my poll, beautiful. Will you come again? Yes, 100%. That's very kind of you. Thank you. I will send out the deck for this. You will see there are some slides that I missed because I always plan too much. It's my general what's the word? My Achilles heel. I always plan too many things, but there are lots of things in the deck. There's some links to some research papers and things that you can look at. My biggest message would be is just to keep going. Teachers are superheroes, but we can't leave this till September. It's not good enough. We need to think about it now, and we need to be very, very, very creative in what we're doing. We need to collaborate with each other. We need to share ideas. We need to work together. And that, if that is any message you take away from this, that is my message. And with that, I would say thank you. So thank you very much for coming. I will pop everyone an email with the deck and the poll at a later stage. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you.